If you're losing clients in the first 6 months of having them, it's probably nothing to do with your results. It's more likely to be your onboarding process or lack of one. Most owners think that churn occurs because of something that has occurred recently. It's actually often the case that it's because of something that didn't happen or did happen during that client's onboarding that they've never been able to get over or recover from. The first 30 days are really key. So I'm going to take you through the onboarding system that I steered clients towards that helped them reduce the likelihood that clients churn unexpectedly in the early months of a partnership. I've worked one-to-one now with over 40 agency owners, and in most cases, when a churn comes around, it tends to be unexpected for these people. The performance is good, they've seemingly built a relationship in the early days, and things look rosy, but then the email lands. We're going a different direction with things. Often it's a surprise, but honestly it shouldn't be. And it isn't after we dig into what they're doing in the first 30 days. The things that may or may not be influencing how a client perceives your ability, or even just what you're like to work with as a partner/business. Poor onboarding just plants doubt. Slow decisions or slow actions off the back of a good promising kickoff call, maybe uncertainty around next steps, or even just showing up late to a meeting or not sending an email when you were meant to. These are all little things in their own right that can stack up and, again, make a client question whether they've made the right decision about which agency they're going to work with. And once that client makes the conscious decision or starts thinking about whether they've made the right call with their agency, you're always fighting an uphill battle, and it's going to be very tough to recover things from here. My view is that onboarding done well is both an element of process and experience. So in terms of process, there are key things that should happen for every client the same way. Even if they don't realize that that is the case, you're doing things that are key to helping you find success for them long term in the first few days and weeks. You're laying the foundations, and that's a non-negotiable. The experience element, these are the little things or the bits and pieces along the way that can make that client feel special, make them feel like they're not just another client. So I'm going to break down the system that I tend to encourage clients to follow. There really are kind of 5 key stages to this. Fundamentally, the aim here is to try and instill a layer of confidence as early as possible in the client so that they believe, truthfully, that you're the one that's going to take them through not just the next couple of months, but they can feasibly see a path to working with you long term. Okay, so stage number 1, pre-sale expectations. If there's one thing that agency owners keep getting wrong in their sales and onboarding process, it's probably this: over-promising that ultimately ends up in under-delivery and under-servicing new clients. That only goes one direction, and it's a tendency for us all to fall into this trap of saying, yeah, I can do this or I can do that. In reality, you're just selling these made up bespoke packages that are never going to be delivered on just because you really want some revenue. That's unhealthy, unfair for the client, and really just unsustainable. So when I say pre-sale expectations, what do I mean? Specifically, and understandably, it's just being very clear with the client in terms of what you're going to deliver for them and why, based on what they need and really what they're looking for. So this is being very, very clear and upfront with the client about when they can expect results based on your understanding of the market or the channel that you're using to help them maybe gain new customers or whatever it might be. This is definitely not the time for over-exaggerating or overstretching expectations or pushing the boundaries in terms of delivery or timelines. If anything, you probably want to be more cautious here. For example, if you pretty much know for sure that at around the 90-day mark with a client, you really start to see results in a channel, please don't say that you're going to start to see results after 60 days. Because whenever day 75 comes around, in reality, you're perfectly on track. But the client immediately is like, where are the results? You told me you'd see them after 60 days. So this is really where generally the owner or whoever is bringing the client in the door as part of the sales process needs to be very open and transparent with the wider team. If this bit isn't done right, everything else is going to fall flat. It's very unlikely or very hard for a relationship to get off the ground if expectations are not clear and fair from the start. It's the definition of setting up a partnership to fail, and that is frankly a waste of time for everybody involved. We might make more revenue in the short term as an agency, but as we have discussed in the past, that is not foundational, it's not helpful, and ultimately the churn is just meaning you're going to have to replace that revenue with another client very soon. Number 2 then is internal communication and really alignment. So what does this mean? Very simply, once the moment it is confirmed a client is signing, it's really important for you to get the right people up to speed with how things have been going, what the expectations are, 2.1, and then ultimately bring the right people together to discuss next steps. Key thing here is that this is happening internally first. Very next step after the moment that that client has signed or agreed to move forward, you get people on the same page internally. There shouldn't really be any shocks at this stage either. It's important to let the team know what's happening in your sales pipeline as much as it is whenever something closes. So the account manager in most cases will have an awareness of what's about to come in the door or likely to close. That just makes their lives so much easier when it comes to things like preparing the week ahead or leaving enough room for maybe a surge of new clients, whatever the case might be. This is the time where we get the right people lined up to deliver the right work when it's needed over the course of the next 1 to 4 weeks usually, but you could map it out for say the first 90 days. The key word in all of this is alignment. Why is that important? Well, the last thing we want is to have more internal meetings about a new client because we're all unsure about what should be happening and when and by who and why. A common mistake you'll see here is maybe an account manager either not paying enough attention to the details or doing quite the opposite, taking the details and trying to move too much too fast at once. They're either leaving the team around them behind and their pod that's going to be helping them with the account is confused, or they're misinformed or just don't have any information at all about the new client coming in the door. Point 3 then is kickoff. Generally, week 1, there's going to be a kickoff call with the new client. There are really 2 key things here. A, what does the agency need from the client? B, a chance to begin to establish a relationship with the right people at the client. And then C, it's really a chance to establish a communication system, how you're going to be communicating with the client day in, day out as required. What's really important with the needs element here is that we're not overstretching or over asking. The last thing we want to do in the first proper meeting as a team with this new client is to have 40 questions lined up, going into every little detail about hypothetical scenarios that might arise and things we might need access to. We want the basics covered, the things that are going to allow us to do our job as soon as possible to a very high standard. So generally that means access and or information about what they've done in the past or the tools and software and programs that they have access to that we might need to use as part of our service. What are the things that are fundamental, non-negotiable areas where you need to get something from the client? Plus, what are the things that in time are things you'll maybe want more information on? The communication system really comes down to, again, what's the best way for you to communicate maybe formally and casually with the client? What's the structure and what's the purpose of each of these meetings, and when are they going to get things from you and why? So for example, if you're going to send a weekly email to the client, what is it going to contain? Is there anything you need from the client usually when you send that email? And then what's going to happen in the week after you sent that email? It's really just about removing any layer of uncertainty about what the client's going to get from you, when and why. Again, a common mistake here will be a bit of naivety. There might be an assumption that just because the client has worked with an agency before, they have a sense for what communication looks like. Problem, not all agencies communicate the same. They definitely don't use the same tools, and they have very different best practices from agency to agency. So just because you think is something as the norm, that might be something very new and very different compared to what they did with a previous partner. Number 4 then is handoff. So handoff of who and to what. This relates to sales getting out of the relationship essentially. Now, my view on this is really that up until this point, the person that has won the account is likely still part of the conversation. They're not leading the conversation necessarily, but think of it as an agency owner that's just won a new client. It would be kind of odd in my mind if they just dropped off immediately after the deal is signed. They have to stick around for at least a while, and depending on the maturity of the agency or whoever is leading the deal initially, they might drop off at a certain point, maybe sooner or later than others. Typically, I think the kickoff call is a great chance to disconnect the salesperson from the relationship. And that doesn't mean they just disappear, but they're less active, considerably so, than they have been. The leader and key account owner is clearly established at this point if it hasn't already been. The client needs to know who their go-to is and why and what to expect from them and when. So this is now the chance for the account manager, again, typically the type of person that steps in here, to really begin to own the relationship with that client. Now, there might be some resistance here. It depends, again, what the sales process has been like, what's been said to this point in time. But fundamentally, if the steps have been followed that I usually recommend, it's very much the case that the client knows this is going to happen and they're very, very happy for it to happen. They realize that the owner or salesperson really doesn't have anything to do with their day-to-day delivery. So it makes complete sense for someone who is not that person to be their go-to for communication most weeks. Of course, there's a caveat here because depending on the size of the agency and the role of the owner or salesperson, that same person then might be involved maybe quarterly from a strategic perspective, or even just quarterly from a general relationship, or maybe even a commercial perspective. It really depends, but best practice here is that we get that person out of the relationship so that the team that's delivering the work and building the strategy and owning the client account can really just get all the things from their perspective. A mistake here that I often see with owners is that they'll keep a hold of things. They'll hold on tight and they won't let go of the new client because the team maybe can't quite do it right. That's a real problem, and it's going to shine through maybe a month or two from now, or it could be even a year from now. Whenever problems arise or challenges or opportunities come up, the client is going to do what? They're going to go back to the owner. And that's when an owner typically says something to me like, I'm still having to handle client matters. It's because they never really let go of the relationship that they'd established during the sales process in the first place. And the final and fifth point is really about initial wins. So this is about building the confidence with the client. Now, it depends what service you're delivering or what your agency really is here. Some channels or some services, there might be a greater or lesser opportunity to actually help a client see some initial quick wins. But fundamentally, a quick win could quite simply be great communication or initial steps mapped out really clearly, or something that you're capitalizing on that a previous agency really didn't do very well. Let's say you've just started working with a client. You're a couple of weeks in. They know that they can't really expect too much from you until maybe month 2 or 3 in terms of clear results, in terms of tests you're running or adjustments you've made to their strategy. But are there things you can help them see or things you can show them that give them a sense that they're on the right track, or even just give them the reassurance that you've put everything in place that you said you would about 2 or 3 weeks ago? The kickoff call is usually where some initial ideas surface, or plans are laid out, or strategies are put in place off the back of. And I think it's really key then to show the client, particularly in the first couple of weeks, usually the first 3 or 4, that you can do what you've said you're going to do in the way you said you're going to do it. All that said, the aim here is to reiterate the point that this is really a long-term thing. Like, you're trying to help them see success over a defined or longer period of time. And the quick wins are nice, but they're just giving them a bit of a boost. The mistake here is just assuming that the client's happy and gladly going to wait for you to just produce results in 90 days. Your communication slacks off, you don't really share much about what you're doing, and to be honest, you just assume that they're grand not to hear from you at all. And while some clients might be like that, that's a dangerous assumption to make, that all of them will be fine with that type of relationship. In most cases, they need more than that, and truthfully, they deserve more than that. So those are just 5 key elements to me in relation to onboarding that I think will A, reduce the risk of churn, and B, just get the partnership off to a better start. If I was to hone in one area in particular though, it is step 1. It is just setting clear expectations for what is about to happen as part of that client's onboarding. That is such an important point, and is generally the one that the salesperson or owner owns. Great onboarding, even exceptional onboarding experiences, don't guarantee that a client sticks around with you for years, but a poor onboarding pretty much kills any chance of it whatsoever. It's very hard to recover from a lackluster first 30 days with a new client. If you can get your onboarding dialed in, that's a really, really big step for most agencies. You'd be surprised how many agencies I've worked with don't really have any onboarding process, and whether it works out with a client or not is kind of down to chance. Beyond that, onboarding is really one of the key systems I would recommend an agency has in place in the early days. So if you want to see the other systems I'd recommend, check out this video. If you can get those put in place, you're going to be in a really, really good place to serve clients exceptionally well from day one. So if you're an agency owner that's been trying to build out an onboarding process over the years and never really established one, or maybe in general you're just unsure how to operate your agency, let me know. There's a link in the description where you can book a call to discuss these things further.